If you're struggling with a drug or alcohol addiction, now is the time to take action and get professional help. Call Recovery Centers of America at 1-800-941-2358. You are worthy of recovery from your addiction, and calling RCA will be the first step in getting the help you need. Recovery Centers of America answers the phone and admits patients 24/7, and because safety is a top priority, all patients and staff are routinely tested for COVID-19. Their expert team of physicians and medical professionals will treat you with compassion and dignity and provide an evidence-based treatment plan that's custom-tailored to your specific needs. Recovery Centers of America has detoxification and residential treatment centers across the East Coast and Midwest, and many of their treatment centers are in-network with insurance providers. So RCA's best-in-class inpatient and outpatient care, which is offered both in-person and via teletherapy, is affordable and accessible. Make this the year you conquer your addiction. Call 1-800-941-2358, 800-941-2358.
This week at Macy's, use your coupon or Macy's card and get an extra 20% off just in time for Valentine's Day. Save on top of already great deals, like 35 to 55% off dazzling diamonds, gemstones, and more. And sleek handbags and wallets from Kipling, Nine West, Inc., and more top designers, now 25% off. Plus, Star Money bonus days are going on now. Learn more at Macys.com/starmoney. Savings off sale and clearance prices, exclusions apply.
What is Crack-a-Lack-and Hardwood Knocks listeners? I am Dan Favale, coming at you without my fantabulous co-host Adam Frommel. I am, however, super excited to be joined by Yasmin Duale, who covers the Toronto Raptors and NBA at large for a couple of different places. She is the creator of the basketball and culture journal, The Neon Playbook. Follow that on Twitter at The Neon Playbook. She's also a co-host of the Dishes and Dimes podcast. Follow them on Twitter at Dishes Dimes Pod. Also subscribe to their Patreon. It is among the best $10 a month I spend. She also writes for Yahoo Sports Canada and the Basketball News. She's great at what she does. Definitely make sure you're following her on Twitter at Carmelo Drama. That's at CarMelodrama. We talk about a bunch of stuff pertaining to, you guessed it, the Toronto Raptors, who seem to have turned a corner, and they were among the teams that we did not cover leading into the preseason when we did our singular team deep dive. So we're going to start covering those teams a little bit more in depth over the next few weeks and months here. We also talk about some teams other than the Toronto Raptors that are going to be fascinating to us moving forward. We hit on the Dallas Mavericks, the Miami Heat, the Brooklyn Nets, and the Philadelphia 76ers there. It's a great podcast. Hope you enjoy it. Before we get started, just the usual reminder to pretty please rate, review, and subscribe to us wherever you're getting your podcasts. If you do not use iTunes, please head over there anyway. Search Hardwood Knocks, throw us that 5-star rating, write a review, helps us out a bunch. Definitely make sure that you are subscribed and downloading all our episodes on your podcast player, though. You can also follow us on Twitter at Hardwood Knocks, and go to YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com, search Hardwood Knocks. We will come up, subscribe. Now that all that's out of the way, let's get to talking some Toronto Raptors and teams that will be fascinating to us the rest of the season with Yasmin Duale. Yasmin, welcome back to the Hardwood Knocks podcast. Thank you so much for jumping on with me today to talk some Toronto Raptors. How are you doing?
I'm well. Thanks for having me. I'm always down to talk Raptors.
Which is good, because it sounds like you're on a little bit of a podcast marathon to talk about the Raptors
yes.
at this point.
Need to get out of the way.
They are forever fascinating to me, at least, because I like so many of the players on their team. But this season, they've been probably more polarizing than people expected. They struggled to start out the gate. But I guess my first question to you would have to be, have they turned a corner? Just based off, they've won 7 of their last 11. The half-court offense has been sort of clicking during that time. The defense has been good. Do you think that this stretch is a harbinger of things to come? What are you noticing about it? Is it something that might be a little bit fleeting? What are kind of your thoughts on that?
I think that you're right. They definitely have turned a bit of a corner. I think, I'm not sure it's sustainable. I think that they have some real issues down to the current roster. I feel like playing in Tampa out of Toronto is a bigger variable than people are crediting it. Not being able to play near your home. I think players are still living in hotels, a few of them. So I feel like that's significant, not having your regular training facilities in your home, by your home court and everything. And I think that they would be playing a little differently if they were in Canada right now. But so I'm not sure it's sustainable. I think that this was going to be a tough season regardless once they had their request to play in Canada denied by the federal government. So, but yeah, there's some real issues as it stands with the center rotation specifically, because outside of that, the team is otherwise the same. So I'm not sure I buy that they've fully turned a corner, but I do think that they're finding a little bit more chemistry. And I think that Baines has been playing like his normal self rather than being an active minus out there.
The Tampa thing, I feel like, is something that should be so obvious to discuss more, but it's kind of become, I guess, just amid this season that's just so abnormal to begin with. It feels like it gets swept under the rug more. And even when, fans clearly shouldn't be at games, but when they've mentioned, like, could there be, fans at one point or more fans in Tampa Bay? And it's like, well, who cares? Like, the Raptors are in Tampa Bay. It's not Toronto.
Exactly.
I don't know what that would do.
They had fans to start the season. I think they changed that. But when they were starting the season with fans, it wasn't Raptors fans because all Canadians are in Canada right now. I'm sure they would have made the trip if it was regular border restrictions, but with the way everything's set up, like you have to quarantine for 2 weeks if you enter the country, and once you come back you got to quarantine another 2 weeks. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and look, to be honest, if you are going through all that, the place to go is definitely not the United States anyway. So
yeah.
Is there anything you've noticed sort of about their half-court offense during this stretch that encourages you? Because it was struggling for the most part this season, which I think was predictable, but it's been, I looked it up on Clean the Glass, it's sixth in efficiency. Again, 11 games is 11 games, but 11 games is also more than half the season right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that, but I'm not surprised because I just think that perhaps it was the last 11 games or so. His stats may not indicate it, but just Baines looks better on the court. I think that his screening has really helped the Raptors backcourt, which is pretty bite-sized as it stands with Fred and Kyle. So having a big body, Baines is one of the best screeners in the NBA at his position. So just having him free up talented guards like Kyle and Fred, I think opens up a lot for their half-court offense. And also, I think the post-up has been really good for Pascal. I know it's something that he was struggling with last season. He got most of his points in transition, or he was spotting up from the perimeter. But this season, I'm seeing him used in the half court far more often. If the Raptors sense an advantage at his position, they'll have him post up and draw the double, which he has done very well. He's really good at finding the most opportunistic pass. So I think that's just really helped them. Since he's bringing forth a skill set that he didn't have last season. When it came to the half court, it was usually split cut action led by Gasol. He was really their half court maestro, which is it's surprising, but people are seeing how he's playing on the Lakers. Like, he's struggling right now, but they see the extra wrinkle in the offense that Gasol brings with his bounce passes and everything.
Has the national discourse veered too far away from reality on Siakam at this point? I feel like, and this is me from afar,
I've been ignoring it. I'm not going to lie. Like, I'm not up to date with it. I think that he will always be a bargain for the Raptors, just considering the pick that he was, what he's turned into. I think that Pascal is really a viable franchise cornerstone along with another star. I think we know kind of his limitations. We know how excellent he can be when he's paired and allowed to flourish as a number 2 option. And there's no shame in being inadequate as a number 1. There's only a handful of guys in the NBA, but I think that coupled with the long break prior to the bubble season, his conditioning suffered. From what I understand, he was dealing with visa issues that where he was in Canada throughout the lockdown, and we have pretty strict restrictions here in terms of congregating and renting spaces to exercise and stuff like that. Is very difficult in Canada. So I guess when he came back to the bubble, his conditioning was shot, and it kind of led to kind of a monumental collapse against the Celtics, which came down to one possession, considering how poorly he played. And this season, I think that he's been great. I think that his 3-point shot has been slumping. If there's anything that he could improve, it would be that. I think he would be exceeding last season's regular season numbers if his shooting comes around. But yeah, I think that the discourse around him is kind of framed by how shocking his play was in the bubble compared to how good he was in the regular season. Mm-hmm. And it kind of shows you the opposite side of the coin. Like, you had players putting up numbers that made no sense, like Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray, and then you had other players putting up numbers that made no sense, like Pascal Siakam. So I think he'll come around. I think that once they have a normalized season, hopefully next year, we'll get to see him at the best of his abilities. But I think he's, doing his best with what he has at the moment.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned the shooting. He's at 25.5% on wide open threes, and that's obviously concerning, but I think he's shot well enough on those for the past 2 seasons where you could think that there will be some progression to Amin. And, oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. I was just going to say that, you bring up a good point, because it's he has like the history of shooting well on wide open shots. And I believe he started the season really hot from 3, and even in preseason he was really hot from 3. So I think that this is kind of a natural sharp progression over the course of the last I think dozen or so games where he's really struggled. But I wouldn't be surprised if like a hot streak was coming out to normalize those numbers, but we'll see.
And the other thing you kind of alluded to is, even if I do think there's legs to the thought that, hey, maybe he can't be the single best player on a championship team, right, but it's like not really an insult. And so I don't necessarily understand. It feels like people looked at the Celtics series last year specifically, and then maybe like the first 3 or 4 games of this season, and then just like passed this or reversed a verdict from before. And I don't quite get it, because he's been so good since then. And, the shooting is a concern. And I think his passing is just, it is a lot better this year. I still think, just from what I've seen of him, that he could, at some point, it'd be nice if there was like more directional variance on his drives, but he's still just a monster on those too, even if he still doesn't have the best handle. So I'm, I guess, perplexed, just someone like being so far removed from the situation, that the discourse still feels like he's somehow underachieving this season, or that if he's a number 2 on a title contender, that's somehow a failure.
Yeah, it's like, it's very hard for me to understand it. I'm not going to bother trying. I think that the best way the Raptors can respond to it would be to simply build another championship caliber team, so people can be reminded of how talented he can be when he's in his optimized role, when he's maximized. So it's a wait and see scenario. And honestly, like, the only response to any critique is like, they want a championship with him as the second scorer, Right. So we've seen him succeed in his best position. So, that's the only way you can look at it.
Can you explain the brilliance of Fred VanVleet when it doesn't feel that like when you watch him, that he's like actually changed that much as a player, aside, I guess, from I only looked this up a couple days ago, he's bombing like 8 threes from 25 plus feet this year. And like, that's the most noticeable difference in his game that I can find.
The thing is, with Fred, I think that he's made the same amount of crazy strides as Siakam, but it hasn't been as like exponential on a season to season basis. So people hadn't noticed it. So it kind of got caught up in that shadow. But he has really, really improved his game. I think that he has, he's easily, like any Raptors fan would agree with this, that he is probably like the most polished player on the team. I feel like Lowry's more cerebral, so a lot of his skill sets aren't really like, oh, he has like the best handle, or he is the best shooter. It's a little more of a gray area that he covers on the court, which is why he's so effective on advanced stats specifically. But with Fred, I think that he has a ridiculously tight handle. He is not turnover prone. He is more of a scorer. He's not really a pure point guard, but he has kind of masked a lot of his deficiencies as a point guard this season in particular. Like he used to have an issue where he would just dribble out the clock, but that has happened so rarely this year. He's making point guard like reads, and he's also improved as that scorer that he probably truly is. I feel like we always joke that if Fred was like 6'3" or 6'4", he'd be a shooting guard. So he's not a classic point guard. He's more like in the Kyrie ilk rather than the Chris Paul ilk. So that's definitely what changed for him. I think that he's just become a smarter player, and he's realizing how he's taking the one skill that he truly has over a lot of the NBA, which is his shooting ability, and just, maximizing it. And it's really, really fun to see.
And I was a little bit surprised because I don't know that he's definitely not the most trustworthy finisher when he is attacking the basket, but he is shooting a career high from 2-point range. It's only 46.1%, but I didn't realize it was a career high. And there's something about, even though he's not maybe the best creator with the ball in his hands, there is just watching him, like, you trust him with the ball, and so I guess there's something intangible there, but it is just interesting that it feels like, I guess, as you point out, it's more incremental improvement from him. It's just he probably should be an all-star this seain, and it just doesn't feel like his game has exploded in any one area.
Yeah, and with his finishing, like I even wrote about it where I was just saying that if he just takes more mid-range shots, we already know that he has excellent mechanics. If he just takes more mid-range shots, it'll force defenders to stop roaming at the rim, because before I think his shot profile was just threes and finishing right at the rim. So when you fill in that gray area on the court, it kind of forces defenders to get closer to you, which would give him the upper hand, getting a step on them. Since he's not crazy athletic, he can't always get that space required. He'll get blocked at the rim a lot. But when he takes those mid-range shots, kind of like what 2015 or 2016 Lowry realized, was if he starts utilizing that mid-range area, it'll just kind of give him that upper hand. So I think that's what we're noticing. It seems that he's probably shooting like over 60% from the mid-range right now. It's been ridiculous.
You mentioned Kyle Lowry before, that he kind of covers this, I guess, immeasurable gray area was the best way to put it. Is he, like, just watching him this season and on all the different iterations of kind of the Raptors that he's been on and how he fits, it seems so seamlessly in basically any version that they're trotting out there. Is he the most scalable star in the NBA? And like more so to the point of, I think a lot of people think, oh, Stephen Curry is basically the most scalable star in the NBA, but you still kind of have to change the way that others will play around Stephen Curry to optimize him or cater to his stardom, which is totally fine. I feel like Kyle Lowry just takes on whatever identity that you need him to be. Yeah.
He just, I feel like he has enough of every skill set to kind of just seamlessly fit in anywhere. I feel like Kawhi was similar, where you could just kind of plug him into this Raptors team and he was able to become what they needed, which was kind of a little different from what he was on the Spurs. So I feel like Kyle's the same way. He's great off ball. He's great on ball. He can finish, he can shoot, he can kind of do a little bit of everything. He's a great playmaker. He has instant chemistry with big men. And yeah, I feel like that would fit on every squad. It's actually what makes the offseason coming up the most interesting. For him, at least.
Yeah, I mean, because he's going to be older and a free agent. I still think he'll just be like high. I mean, he's probably highly sought after on the trade market right now. So yeah, he's just a player you want on your team.
Hardwood Knocks listeners, I hope you're all sitting down because we have to tell you something monumental. We love sports betting, and whether you've been betting for a while or you're thinking about getting started, we want to let you know about a great resource for sports bettors, the Action Network. The Action Network is where sports fans go to bet smarter and experience real financial gains. In fact, their Action Network app was recently named the best app in sports betting. And with an Action Network Pro subscription, you can unlock the very best of the app. When you sign up for an Action Network Pro subscription, 1, you can access the Pro Report, which includes expert projections for every game. 2, you can see money and bet percentages on every game, so you can see the teams professional gamblers are betting on. 3, you can take advantage of pro systems, which match winning historical betting trends with the latest games and lines. And 4, you can track every bet you make and get alerts in real time. So if you're looking to bet smarter, an Action Network Pro subscription is the best way to get started. And for a limited time, our listeners can receive 50% off an annual Pro subscription. Just go to actionnetwork.com now and receive 50% off an annual subscription when you use the promo code KNOX. This offer won't last, so go to actionnetwork.com to sign up for a pro subscription and use promo code KNOCKS, KNOCKS, to receive 50% off. And start betting smarter today.
What happened with Chris Boucher that he went from clearly the MVP favorite to, but maybe a most improved player favorite, to now he's, his minutes are down. He's not shooting as well. Like, have you noticed anything there? What's going on there? Do you have any gauge on what his actual value is to this team?
I think that his shooting has improved drastically, which I think was the biggest change. He's really good. He's really improved as a roller. Like, he's incredibly good as a roller, but he's not the best when it comes to that pass, that short roll pass. He won't always make the right read. He'll hesitate for a split second, which will kind of deconstruct the play. And I also think not a huge issue, but the reason for his the most recent decline was the improvement of Aaron Baines, which probably shrank Chris's minutes, and the Raptors often opting to play Stanley at the 5 sometimes kind of messes with things. But because of the fact that Boucher is undersized, he will oftentimes only match with bench bigs, because that's usually where he could find the advantage. And that just kind of limits the Raptors' versatility, especially when the opposing big men are talented. So if you're dealing with some teams, that 5 position isn't an emphasis at all. But for other teams, they have a Vucevic, they have an Embiid, they have a Brook Lopez, So when that happens, which I think has happened over the course of the last several games, dealing with, Bam or something at that position, it's created an issue for Chris where I think it's affected his minutes. So I think at his most effective, he's probably matching up against a team with a weaker big rotation, like perhaps the Celtics or the Nets, are where he could find advantageous situations. But he hasn't had that lately.
And so do you think that kind of inherently caps his ceiling or his value to the team?
Definitely. Yeah, and he's on the older side. He started playing basketball super late. I think he was even later than Siakam. Probably, I think he was 19 or something when he started playing organized basketball. But again, he's undrafted, but he's become like a viable rotation player, which is in of itself a success story.
Yeah, I mean, everyone wants teams want the shot blocking big who also spaces the floor, and that's what he does. And as you mentioned, he feels like he's moving really well off the ball this year, even independent of actual screens, like if he's just trying to cut baseline or something. So, but I looked up, when he plays with Siakam, like the Raptors just can't grab defensive rebounds either.
No.
Yeah.
Those tend to be, I think, the games where Siakam grabs like 15 boards or something, because Chris just gets blown away by box outs. Like he literally looks like just kind of a leaf floating because of the wind or something. He gets tossed aside really easily with box outs, which forces Pascal to grab most of the rebounds. And then OG Anunoby has been absent lately. I think I haven't even checked what the injury was. I thought they were resting him or something, but he's been out lately, which reduces the rebounding even more. In those cases, like for the Raptors, whenever they'd go smaller when they had Kawhi, Kawhi would have to make up for that dip in rebounding. So the Raptors forwards with OG and Siakam kind of have to pick up the slack whenever Chris is on the court.
Is that why we don't see more Siakam kind of as the lone big then? I mean, I know Anunoby isn't available right now, and I think it was a left calf injury, if I'm not mistaken, that he's been out with for over a week now, I think. But all season, I was just looking at, just surprised that they haven't gone to Siakam at the 5 more, even when Anunoby's healthy. Is there and I'm sure this has been talked about, but what is the reason?
There's definitely a reason for it. Pascal can play the 5, but the thing is, he actually plays better when he's moved down a position. Like when he's at the 3, he's even more effective than if he was moved up to the 5. And for the Raptors, OG is absolutely like their best small ball big. He can stretch the floor. He's an excellent defender of big men. I think the only big man that I haven't seen him effectively stop was Embiid, who's just offensively like a monster. But he successfully slowed down Jokic, Giannis. Like he has like a stronger base and balance, I think, than Pascal, who tends to be more fluid. I think that Pascal's better at defending point guards than OG. So I'd see he can seamlessly transition between, guarding Kemba and then Jalen and then Tatum on one play, which we saw frequently through that playoff series. Whereas I feel like OG can move up from the 3 to the 4 to the 5 in terms of defense. And the Raptors, they absolutely emphasize defense prior to any offensive play. So to Nick Nurse, I think his first state of mind is, okay, who defends this position better? And it's hands down OG.
As we already mentioned, OG's been out, but what have been your impressions of year 4? And the one thing I'll preface it with is and I think I asked you about this when you were on over I don't even know if it was the off season or the unscheduled off season during the pandemic, whatever it was, but whether they might give him a chance to like explore more self-creation in his game. And I feel like there was that matchup with the Pacers where it felt like he really did that, but I also feel like that really hasn't been a focus for him this season.
Mm-hmm. I feel like OG kind of for me, like I think that his ceiling is I think that he can perhaps become kind of a jack of all trades kind of 3-and-D guy. That's I think his ceiling, but I could totally be wrong. He's only 23 years old, so it's hard to say.
Right.
But I think that this season I've noticed that they're allowing him to post up far more often. That's something that would come out maybe in preseason last year, but it's something that he does regularly a couple times every single game. He's kind of perfected the 3-and-D role, so I think that they're perhaps allowing him to kind of dip a toe into other forms of offense, but I think that they're easing him into it because, when a player is this age, you could totally overexpose them and they become overwhelmed and they kind of just stop doing everything well. Right. So I think that they're trying to kind of allow him to fill this role that he's comfortable in, that he's kind of nailed for the past 3 seasons, and then allowing him to attempt other things. And yeah, he's definitely attempting far more self-creation than he ever has. It's not going to be a lot in comparison to Pascal or Kyle, but it's definitely far more. It's gone beyond just catch and shoot threes for him.
Yeah, I was just kind of hoping they would try more of it. And there's probably,
Right.
You mentioned his strength before. That I don't think there was a better example of, him going against Sabonis on the block against the Pacers in the game that they won against Indiana. And like Sabonis just couldn't even keep him there. And Sabonis is not slight. He's not slight.
Exactly. Yeah, he just kind of effectively removed Sabonis out of that game in that matchup. And that's exactly what I mean. Like his strength against big men is outrageous. So, I think that the offense will come along for him. He's already shown like a capacity for gaining skills that he doesn't otherwise have. He wasn't a shooter in college, and he's become an excellent catch and shooter. So it'll be interesting to see him kind of just like, one thing that I love about Mikal Bridges is how he can kind of do a little bit of everything. So it'll be really cool to see if he can not only expand his offensive skill sets as a scorer, but also as a distributor. Besides interior passing, I want to see him, try other things out of the pick and roll and whatnot.
Yeah, if he develops like the type, and he's better at other stuff than Mikal Bridges, but if he develops the type of like passing on the move when he's attacking downhill that Mikal Bridges can do, that's kind of game over for everybody else. And he could be the player that he is right now. And you mentioned the shooting. It is kind of just ridiculous that he is shooting 43.3% from 3 on almost 6 attempts per game. And I don't even know if that gets talked about enough. But that extension he signed, I was 4 years and $72 million. I was flabbergasted he came that cheap. I was shocked.
Yeah, I had them paying Fred VanVleet and OG more money than they ended up doing. So both were secured on pretty excellent contracts. And to have OG during his as he enters his prime for the next 4 years, that's just a really, really solid signing.
Yeah, and I do think it'll get driven home how much of a bargain he was when we see either what Mikal Bridges gets in his extension or if he gets to restricted free agency in 2022. We'll be able to look back and be like, wow, the Raptors really
right. That'll be very interesting.
They fleeced OG there. So some small sample question here. Whose performance do you view as, more impresses you or just more meaningful to this team? Stanley Johnson or Yuta Watanabe?
I think both have been really, really awesome to see. On one hand, you have Stanley Johnson, who's like this lottery pick, who's just, been thriving in his super limited role on the Raptors right now. And he seems, happy with it. It's just showing like a lot of humility to reduce, to go from this superstar from high school and college to kind of just swallowing his pride and trying to improve within the offense that he's in right now. So on one hand, that's really great to see. And I think that he perhaps has a higher ceiling just based on his skills as a ball handler and passer versus Yuta Watanabe. And then on one hand, I think with Yuta, it's been more impressive because I had literally no expectations after they signed him. I wasn't really familiar with him. I know that he didn't get much playing time on the Grizzlies. So, but then he just ends up being like, I think the best way to describe it is kind of Covington-esque, in the sense where he's nailing his threes. He's an excellent defender. And he's also just making like every right read. He just has like this feel for the game you can't really teach. He's always in the right spot for rebounds. He's always in the right spot for deflections and steals and, just things that you can't really teach. And he always seems to be a part of every comeback, or every run. He just seems to be in the middle of it. And those are like my favorite kinds of players. I think that every, decent team needs a couple of those guys. The Raptors, their championship season, every position was that kind of guy, so you can't, they're just kind of an invaluable role player position. So I think that Yuta has been the more impressive play this season, but the most impressive player this season for them, end of bench wise. But Stanley, like that's, it's no small feat for him to start to put things together and figure it out because, it wasn't looking so good for him over the course of the last season. I was shocked he wasn't getting any playing time, but it seems that they've been just putting him in the lab and working on having him reduce his bad habits and everything.
Yeah, didn't Nick Nurse, like, not by name, but basically call him out once last year?
All the time.
Yeah, and so he's done his usage rate is sub 8 or sub 9, whatever it is, and so he's doing everything without looking for a shot. He probably still turns the ball over too much, but he's been a revelation, I think, to me just because of what I knew about him already, and this just feels like a pretty big departure from that. But I had sub-zero knowledge of who Yuta was and what he could do on the court, and so seeing a few games that he's played, and it feels like he plays bigger than he actually is while still moving like someone who's 6'9". When he's defending off the ball, his verticality around the rim. So he is I don't know if it ends up being more meaningful. I think someone like Stanley Johnson, what he technically brings is maybe what teams might want a little bit more. But just because, again, I don't know what anyone's expectations could have been for him this season. He's just been an absolute shock.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the Raptors, gave him a position on the roster beyond. I think he's a two-way right now. I wouldn't be surprised if they boost Yuta just to retain him.
So looking more big picture with this team, is the absence of that player who can put consistent, more effective half-court pressure on the rim still like their biggest missing piece, or is there something else that you look at them and say that they need?
I think that they've kind of mended their issues with getting to the rim. That was a problem, I feel like, for the first several games, but then, they've started to play more aggressively lately. I feel like they, match the opposition's rim paint attempts pretty frequently nowadays. But to me, like the ideal piece to this team that I think would take it from being like just middle of the pack, the low middle of the pack, to being a contender is just having that versatile wing scorer alongside Siakam with average to above average playmaking abilities. There's a few players that fill that kind of spot in the NBA. I think that Victor Oladipo would be a really good get for them.
Oh,
Even potentially like a I'm not really sure which player would fill this role, but a big man that can do something similar, like with a average to above average playmaking ability, defensively tough. I think those two spots are the weakest for them. They need something to fill out that forward spot, like another scoring wing, and then or if they can't get that, they just need another punch from the 5 spot. So we'll see how it pans out. I think when you watch them enough times, you see what they're missing. And you'd often find that, this is a team that can use like another punch, like a Klay Thompson or something, you know what I mean? And it's funny because I was watching the Warriors the other night and I'm like, wow, the Warriors need like another wing scorer and they're golden. And I kind of just forgot that Klay is injured right now. So that's how I feel with the watching Toronto. I'm just like, they need this spot filled out. And, on the bright side, they have like their core locked up. They have Siakam locked up. They have Fred, OG, locked up at their position. So they have the chips required to, make any trades. They have the chips required to, do what they need to do. And, I think it was yesterday that they secured Bobby Webster, which was like a huge question mark, GM of the Raptors. So they have one half of, that front office duo between Bobby Webster and Masai Ujiri locked up. So if they lock up Masai Ujiri, anything's possible, in my opinion.
I will say, I don't know that any team's front office situation is more like tantalizing to people who root for other teams or just cover the league in general than Toronto's, because it feels like every time, like Masai Ujiri's contract situation is an issue from the moment he signs every single deal that he signs. Like everyone's waiting for it to expire, or the clock is always ticking.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he's like sought after free agent for front office positions. Like if he's like every day there's an article about how he may not stay or how this organization is looking to lure him. But in my opinion, if he ends up leaving the Raptors, which is very well within the realm of possibility, it would end up being for an opportunity outside of the NBA or outside of basketball, perhaps in another league, perhaps in another country. Like I don't see him just leaving to go to another NBA team. That wouldn't make much sense to me.
He's definitely not going to Washington if he does, at least. That is not the team that he's leaving to.
I don't know, man. Biden won. He might want, like, he might be interested. Like, someone brought up, like, it's not looking, like, if the election season doesn't look too good for Justin Trudeau, he might dip.
I didn't even think of that. So he'll hold dual roles in the Wizards front office and then the actual White House. That would be, that'd be interesting. So what is this team? So I guess this is twofold. One, the Kyle Lowry vultures continue to circle, and I find it funny, or not funny. I find it odd that he's viewed as like such a common trade target when I don't know that, there's the sentimental stuff where Kyle Lowry's the best Raptor in franchise history. He's won a title with them. He is their culture, it feels like, but they're also just not bad enough to be like, well, we'll entertain Kyle Lowry trade offers. And I've seen just a discrepancy in the, like the value of hypothetical packages that have been pitched. I think the variance there is huge, but my actual question would be like, what is more likely for this team insofar as they would do anything major this year? Is it that maybe they do something where they pivot more towards the big picture and they do deal Kyle Lowry, or is it they go, I don't want to say all in, but maybe they go after a Victor Oladipo? So what's more likely, like which side of the spectrum do you think they would fall on if they were to make a major type move like that?
Honestly, I can't say anything definitively because I feel like strategically it would totally make sense to trade Kyle and without risking him leaving for nothing. If they don't deal him, I think that it's clear the intent is to extend him and perhaps have him, go for another run with the core and add another piece that's missing to the team and just kind of go into, that Raptors tradition of just kind of being among the top of the conference and seeing how things go in the playoffs, just nailing the regular season and then waiting in the background for opportunity to pounce. So I can't really get a read on the situation. It seems that Masai is, the biggest Kyle Lowry fan. Like he talks about him being a Hall of Famer, how he wishes he could play for 10 more years and all that. And, he seems to have a hold on the coaching staff and on the front office. Like, I feel like Kyle has a foot in everything for the organization. He's contacted for decisions. He represents the team in meetings and everything. So perhaps he enjoys that kind of role that he holds on the organization. And he doesn't, if they don't insult him with an extension offer, he's totally fine with his position. He's fine with, handing the keys to Fred VanVleet and perhaps taking a more background role as, perhaps a 2-year deal or a 3-year deal or something that allows him to kind of fade to the background, with dignity on a singular, team that he's been holding the reins for the past decade or so. So that would make sense to me. But it's hard to get a read on the situation because he perhaps just wants to win another ring. I'm positive there's a spot for him on the Philadelphia 76ers. I know that he has a relationship with Morey, and that's his hometown, and he's friends with Embiid. So I wouldn't be surprised if he facilitated a trade there or if they were able to lure him in free agency. I wouldn't be shocked.
And the Raptors themselves, and just independent of Masai's future, they're just in this approaching another interesting offseason because, they were billed as one of the Giannis destinations. And not only is he off the board, but basically every single star player that was going to enter 2021 free agency is off the board. And so they'll still have cap space to work with.
Kawhi's still there.
Right. And it's like, that'd be really funny. That would be
hilarious. That would be the most hilarious.
What does that say about Paul George as a teammate, though, if that happens?
Oh God.
So they're like there's no like next obvious move for them. And so do you like view them as a team that would be bold enough still to maybe go after Bradley Beal should he become available? Or do you think this is going to be something where they're more likely to try and organically build themselves up from within?
I don't know if I see them trying to build organically because the issue with winning for so many years is that they haven't really brought in any lottery picks into the fold of their roster. So they kind of just have a bunch of guys who have exceeded expectations with, Fred being undrafted and, Siakam being the 27th pick and OG being, I don't know, the 23rd pick or something. It's just a bunch of guys who just exceeded expectations and just have incredible work ethic. So, and another thing is that their core is on the older side. So, I think Siakam's like 26 now and OG's 23 and Fred is same age as Siakam. So I think that they'd want to be in a situation where they're prepping for another run or they have perhaps like a 2-year plan or a 2-year window where they're looking to optimize the prime years of their core. So I don't see them trying to go into like a rebuild. A lot of people are suggesting that they look to trade OG, that they look to trade Pascal and stuff. And I just don't see how that benefits them. Masai doesn't seem to be a rebuild sort of guy. It's not something that he's ever attempted in his tenure here. So, I'm not going to put anything out of I'm not going to throw any options out the window. I wouldn't be surprised with any approach that they take. But you're right; they're in like a crossroads situation with a lot of decisions to make, and I'm just glad they secured Bobby Webster because it makes that process a little less anxiety-inducing.
Yeah, I mean, making any big trade, unless you are planning to reset and moving Siakam, kind of feels like counterintuitive. I guess maybe if you were into like the James Harden scenarios. But it's with OG is the one that I think you look at. Like they would have to give up a blue chip asset in any big deal that they make. And so it's if you went after a Bradley Beal or I don't even know what the next superstar is that might request a trade, you're probably guaranteed to lose him. And you have to figure out whether that's worth it because he is like your actual younger cornerstone piece.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like I can see, between the two, like I feel like OG's skill set, despite being so vital for the team and their system, is probably more replaceable than Siakam, who's a bit of a rare kind of player in terms of just having a 6'9", 6'10" dude that can dribble and who can play make to a degree and who can get to the rim and everything. Like I feel like that's probably tougher to replace for them than moving an OG and perhaps replacing him with a player that's maybe older that can do the same thing. But yeah, we'll see. Like that's the thing, they do have options.
I think part of me wants to see them stay, like make almost zero changes. Maybe if there's a smaller move at the deadline where if you can get an Oladipo and it doesn't cost you OG, or I won't even it doesn't cost you Lowry, it doesn't cost you OG. Like if you're able to take that type of flyer, that would interest me. I mean, I'm like so detached to Norman Powell. I don't know about you. Like he's just someone who doesn't move the needle for me at all.
No, he's not as skilled as DeRozan, but he's the same kind of. I wouldn't say DeRozan now. I think DeRozan now is net positive on the floor in comparison to past years. But Norm is the same in the sense where he kind of like ends up being a zero on the floor, but he takes up usage, which is like underrated skill. Yeah. You kind of need someone who will take the ball and do something with it. Like he may give up the same amount of points he gives you on the offensive end, and he's not even like a terrible defender. It's just that he's so bad off ball, despite being decent on ball. So, but the thing is he can get buckets. Like he can score 20 for several games in a row. So they would need him to boost his value and perhaps even extend him and do some sort of sign and trade situation with assets if they were going to go for an Oladipo.
Oh, I was about to. If they give Norman Powell a new contract and keep him, I'll be terrified for.
That would be scary.
Is there anything I didn't ask that you wanted to cover about this team?
No, I think we talked about everything possible 20 or so games in that you can analyze from 20 or so games in.
Yeah, they're just one of the teams that I'm going to be fascinated to watch moving forward. And like I said, I would like them to keep the crux of the core together because I still feel like there's something there in the East where this year in general is just so. Should basketball even be being played is like one of the questions we have to ask. And just under all the circumstances, I guess anything could happen. There's that element there. But looking at the Eastern Conference power structure amid all these circumstances, it still feels like there's an opening there for another team to get in there. Aside from, I think Philly and maybe Milwaukee have been the most convincing teams, and neither of them feel unbeatable. So
yeah, they seem like the most consistent. I wouldn't say they're the most convincing. Like, I feel like they have an established system and they have like some sort of continuity. Their best players have remained on the team for several years now. So I feel like those two teams are just feeling really confident and in rhythm right now. But yeah, it doesn't feel as clear cut as the Western Conference. Like I feel like in the West it's kind of like, oh, hopefully this is the year that we get our LA versus LA conference finals.
Yeah, and I know the Western Conference is worse, but I still would just not want to be a part of that middle class. It feels just so hopelessly deep.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, like the East is stronger, but like at what cost? And yeah, it's funny how the tables have turned.
The last question I have for you is there any couple teams that you're going to be, aside from Toronto, particularly fascinated to watch as we move through the rest of the season?
Brooklyn, definitely. Brooklyn is just, I think, fascinating. Like to be a Brooklyn beat writer right now is probably like fun as hell. To have three superstars on one team who, every night is like a highlight reel of, excellent basketball or just like, I feel like highlight worthy mixtape basketball, which seems really fun. So I'm definitely going to be watching a lot of Nets games. I think there's Nets Raptors tonight. I'm going to be watching a lot of 76ers games. I always watch the Sixers. They're kind of like my surrogate team aside from the Raptors. And yeah, I think those are the two teams I'd definitely be watching.
Yeah, Brooklyn it's going to be entertaining for obvious reasons. I'm more interested to see people definitely overhyped how the offense was going to work. The answer is it's going to work. It is working, and it's going to be terrifying. There's real questions on defense though with that team where it's like, oh, is Kevin Durant their second best defender now behind Bruce Brown? That might be a problem. I've bought. You said that maybe Philly and Milwaukee haven't been convincing. I'd agree with you on Milwaukee. That's definitely the wrong word to describe them. For some reason, I'm like, I'll buy all the Sixers stock. They're a team that I just fully trust now, and that's probably wildly dangerous and reckless of me. The other team that I'm sort of intrigued by because I think that they might have a lower floor than people were talked about before the season is just Dallas, where
it's looking rocky. For them.
Yeah, I mean, there's the criticism of Luka. I do think it's fair to be like, hey, if you're going to take this many difficult 3-pointers, at some point you need to make more than 30% of them. That's a real issue. But the bigger conversation is, and maybe it's about, is he a terrible human being as well? But we have to have a real conversation about what Kristaps Porzingis is on the basketball court at some point and whether he's a viable number 2. And if he's not, and I know he's only played like 5 games or whatever it's been since coming back from his injury, but that team is like, I wouldn't expect them to remain in lottery territory all season, but it feels like there might be a lower floor there than people expected unless they make some type of a move at the trade deadline.
Yeah. For me, like, I've never been high on Kristaps. I think that, like, it sounds crazy, but I think that his height and his play style is going to leave him injury prone his whole career. I feel like, just being a huge guy that requires like, jab stepping and all of these things, like, I'm not sure how sustainable that is for him, just being so huge, you know what I mean? So
yeah, I mean,
I've always been reluctant to be like, oh, this is a guy I'm going to turn into like a franchise cornerstone or something. And I think that his reliance on jump shooting, despite like his physical attributes, is also kind of sus. So, like I'm not sure how it's going to turn out for them, but they're also another team that was supposed to be like, a potential Giannis suitor, dark horse Giannis suitor, if you will. So, to see, and you have the Heat too, who also don't look so great. Like, Giannis really messed up.
I would like to think that Giannis did that on purpose, by the way.
Absolutely.
That he was like, let free agency play out, and then I'm going to sign so that all these teams are left bag holding all their cap space for next year.
He feels really about it. He should have waited like till 2021, like to truly during this off season to sign anything. I
floated that too. I had someone who covers the Bucks on in the off season. I said, what if Giannis just did this? Because then he ruins 2 seasons for these teams. And their response was, I just don't think that he wants to go through the drama of not being signed for this year.
Yeah,
and I was like,
that's the reason that he actually gave, and I believed him when he said that.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be exhausting, but at the same time, like, you could have put Toronto's, Miami's, Dallas's, how many other teams' futures on hold for like 2 more years is just incredible. And yeah, Miami, I don't know what to make of them. They've been so banged up that I kind of give them the benefit of the doubt, and maybe I should be doing that with Dallas, but I kind of agree with all the things you said on Kristaps, where I might trust his outside shooting more than you do, but I don't, like, he's not someone who's just going to go out there and get his own shot. I'm not even talking about his post-ups, where he's probably been better there this year than in seasons past. But for someone built like him, he should be able to do more face-up stuff and attacking. And just the sheer injuries that piled up mostly on the left side of his body to this point. He's built like a spaghetti noodle, like the structural stability of a cooked spaghetti noodle. So I don't want to say I'm so low on the Mavericks, but I don't think it was, everyone just assumed like, oh, and probably including myself, that you have Luka, you punched your ticket to 50 wins.
Yeah, and another year with all of these role players, and we know how much chemistry. But I've never thought about this, but we know last season where they had the most efficient offense in NBA history. What if this season is just kind of like a sharp regression on an outlier year? That would be really unfortunate. But we'll see how it pans out. I assumed as well that, another year with all of these role players and stuff would end up, resulting in better chemistry, and Luka would be kind of unlocked with another season of experience, but we'll see.
Yeah, so they're the team to read. And then, like you said, Brooklyn and Philly are both teams to watch. Yasmin, thank you so much for coming on and giving me so much of your time. This was a great conversation. And if you guys are not following her on Twitter, remedy that immediately. You can find her at Carmelo H Drama, or Carmelo Drama just said, but CarmeloHdrama. Fantastic writer, fantastic podcaster, fantastic Twitter follower. So go hit her handle. Yasmin, thanks so much again. And I think, at this point, I'll be pestering you down the line.
No problem. Have a good one.
If you're struggling with a drug or alcohol addiction, now is the time to take action and get professional help. Call Recovery Centers of America at 1-800-941-2358. You are worthy of recovery from your addiction, and calling RCA will be the first step in getting the help you need. Recovery Centers of America answers the phone and admits patients 24/7, and because safety is a top priority, all patients and staff are routinely tested for COVID-19. Their expert team of physicians and medical professionals will treat you with compassion and dignity and provide an evidence-based treatment plan that's custom-tailored to your specific needs. Recovery Centers of America has detoxification and residential treatment centers across the East Coast and Midwest, and many of their treatment centers are in-network with insurance providers. So RCA's best-in-class inpatient and outpatient care, which is offered both in person and via teletherapy, is affordable and accessible. Make this the year you conquer your addiction. Call 1-800-941-2358. 800-941-2358.
This week at Macy's, use your coupon or Macy's card and get an extra 20% off just in time for Valentine's Day. Save on top of already great deals, like 35 to 55% off dazzling diamonds, gemstones, and more. And sleek handbags and wallets from Kipling, Nine West, Inc., and more top designers, now 25% off. Plus, Star Money bonus days are going on now. Learn more at Macys.com/starmoney. Savings off sale and clearance prices, exclusions apply.